So I am recording. Hey everyone, I have been super excited to once again be joined by the wonderful Mark Devlin. We spoke some time back now and it was in October, would you believe? And I'm so proud of this man, really am, for what he represents in the British community, and he has done a lot. He wears his heart on his sleeve. I had the privilege of meeting him and hugging him at the protest in May, and I'm very happy to call him my friend. Mark, I have been super excited, and today, just trying to log on, I think the computer was a bit excited because it wouldn't let us. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, not too bad, Alpa. It's either that or there's some shenanigans afoot, which wouldn't surprise me when it comes to the likes of us trying to get together and have a meaningful conversation. These things tend to happen. I've been having a lot of hassle myself getting onto Zoom with some of the calls I've needed to make as well. So maybe we're ruffling a few feathers, who knows?
I think we are. And I mean, I think my feathers were ruffled just now because I was so excited to come on, and I'm like, I've got all these things that I want to speak to you about. But the main thing I want to start off with is that I say this, and I'll keep saying this to you, Mark, and it's not just to, you know, from a place of false flattery. I am about the impact that we have on people, and my show is now being rebranded to be called Love in Action with Alpa Soni, the spiritual badass. And I think that everything that we've been doing in this movement over the last 15 months has been predominantly about love in action. We've gone through various cycles, the ups, downs, the good, the bad, the ugly, moments where we've wanted to give up. You and I have had many private conversations where, you know, it's not felt the best, you know, and people have really, you know, felt horrible in this movement. However, I still fall back on the very first video, the very first podcast, sorry, that I watched with you, and the impact that it had on my life to provide a framework of where we are now. And I feel that now it's just the revolution is only beginning. And I think it was a testament on Saturday to see almost 2 million, if not more, people at the protest. And I just had a chance to listen to the first 5-10 minutes of your podcast on your Good Vibration show. And yeah, what a positive feeling it was. And you were there, I believe. It's a pity we didn't get to meet.
Exactly. It was an amazing day. It's not a great surprise that we didn't get to meet if that number of people really were in attendance, and it would seem that there were. You make all kinds of arrangements to meet with friends at these things, don't you? And you say, oh, you're going Saturday. Oh, I'll see you there. But the chances of actually bumping into that person, unless you make a coordinated effort to meet them at a specific landmark at a specific time, is never going to happen. Yeah. I did bump into a whole load of friends, a whole load of associates and acquaintances. It was the same thing with me as it always is at these events now. I take about 2 paces before someone says, Mark, oh my God, got to get a picture with you. Come and have a chat. Come and meet my friends. And I spend the time with them for 2 or 3 minutes, you know, chatting, and we're hugging and shaking hands and, you know, boosting each other's morale. And then I take about another 3 paces and the same thing happens. And so on Saturday, I found myself right at the back of the protest march. Yeah. The whole crowd, however many people it was, 1 million, 1.5 million, according to various estimates, had gone past. And I was in the dregs, the stragglers at the back, and I had to try and sort of retrace my steps and find everyone else. But it was an awesome day.
Did you come with friends?
I traveled in by myself, but I made arrangements to meet a whole load of friends there. And there were people from all over the UK that I knew that had come in. I had some good friends from Newcastle. I had a good friend of mine from Middlesbrough. There was a coach load of them that came down. People from literally all over the country. I know there was a big coach load from Liverpool. So these events are gathering in momentum. They're gathering in numbers all the time. It feels great to be a part of these things. I know they get criticized. I know people say that they're just a big love-in or a big social event or whatever. But in all honesty, what's so bad about that in these times? What's so bad about having a social event? On Sunday, many of the sound systems and the DJs had kind of broken away from the main protest. I believe that the sound systems were due to be a part of things on Saturday's schedule, but for whatever reason, they broke away and decided to do their own thing on the Sunday. But I think we all need a bit of a party. We all need to kind of get together and you know, pool our energy and boost each other up and all this kind of thing. So what's so bad about that? But I do feel these events still have a lot of value, in terms of they send a very clear visual message that there are more and more of us all the time that are not having it, that aren't putting up with this tyranny, that are visually pushing back. I mean, just imagine if nobody bothered. If everyone took that pessimistic naysayers viewpoint that I get on some of my YouTube comments, these things are useless, they don't achieve anything. So just imagine everyone stayed at home and there was absolutely no visual indication whatsoever that there was any kind of pushback or any kind of resistance. What message would that send to the control system? They would then be thinking, this is going better than we thought. Nobody's resisting at all. We can do whatever we want. We can really ramp up the tyranny now because nobody's objecting. So these events do have their value. I know many people say that they should be done on weekdays, particularly Mondays, to try and blockade Parliament and stop these cockroaches from getting into their jobs and going about their business. And certainly there's a lot of value in events like that, and they should be taking place as well. I fully support that kind of action. But events of the nature that we had on Saturday do have a lot of value still in my book.
Yeah, no, and I'm in agreement. If we cast our mind back to 15 months ago, Mark, where the first one was taking place at Speaker's Corner, I think there were short of 100 people, if not less. And then the second
many less.
And you were at that one. And then I came to the second one, and I've been to all bar one post then. And if we look at our journey since then, and I'm in agreement, these protests or marches are symbolic of people not acquiescing. They're symbolic of people saying that no more. So I'm in agreement that they hold a lot of value, and this pessimism that circulates in this community is just unnecessary. We need to be united in that sense of unity consciousness to achieve what we achieved 15 months on, 50 to say circa 2 million. I think that's progress. I think people are waking up. There were people that I spoke to at the event where they were on the other side, and unfortunately they had experienced the horrific tragedy of losing people to the V, and this was a testament to them, like, hang on a minute, no, not anymore, we're not going to acquiesce anymore. And I spoke to people from everywhere, and the same thing was happening to me, where people were just saying, you Alpa Soni, and it was like I was turning around and I'm like, is that me? And when we met that time, I mean, we were on the march, was it in May, for a fair bit, walking together, and you know, I could see how that was. And my friend who was with me, she goes, Alpa, it must feel so nice. I said, it feels nice for one simple reason, because I'm connected to humanity and connected to these people, and personally feel it's for a positive reason that I am known, not because I consider myself any kind of celeb, because I don't like celebrities, because they're not doing anything in this movement. We're just brothers and sisters that are holding hands together and being there for each other through the trajectory of this journey. And for me, speaking to people from all walks of life was just beautiful, Mark, hearing their stories, some very sad, some very like, wow, I'm inspired by speaking to you. And the vibe was just brilliant. You know, so definitely there's another one soon, I think in July, if I'm not wrong. I heard murmurs.
24th, I believe.
Yeah. So they hold a lot of value, and Sky News actually reported it, and you could see that they are still saying hundreds of thousands this time, but progress. So from where we were even 6 months ago, we are, you know, things are starting to come out in the press where I am led to believe that we're moving in the right direction. What are your thoughts?
Well, we are. And I think a good gauge of things is, as you mentioned there, the very first event at Hyde Park Speaker's Corner, which I attended, which I was aware of, was in April 2020. And I was already heartily sick of this agenda by then, because I knew what it was. I could see it from day one. And so when it was announced there was going to be a protest event in April 2020, I got along there, and it was absolutely pathetic. It was pitiful. far fewer than 100 people. I would say 40 or 50. It was just, you know, if you got 70 or 80, you'd be doing well.
Yeah.
And look at where we are now with 1 million plus. And it was inevitable, I guess, that with the passage of this much time, that the events would grow in this scale, and that is only going to continue. But it's been such a roller coaster ride of emotions along the way. It's been the most eventful 15, 16 months of any of our lives. Nothing could have prepared us for this, even though it seems our life paths were all about getting us to this point.
Yes.
And it's no accident that we incarnated into the timeline when we did, in the part of the world in which we did, because we were meant to participate in these times and make our contributions to what's going on, not just be passive observers. But we've been tossed around and pushed and prodded and you know, provoked and taken all over the place emotionally, and also physically and spiritually with what's been done to us. And I've experienced every possible human emotion along the way. I'm sure you have too. I'm sure most people listening to this will be in the same boat. And as you say, we've had private conversations where things have not been so great, and we've kind of shared that with each other. Kenzo agrees.
Yes,
and,
he does. He does.
He does. He does. He's adding his support there. And yeah, it's been very, very difficult at times. Then there have been other times where things have seemed very hopeful and optimistic. Last year, there was a lot of that for me because I was following very closely the whole plan, the Q/Trump/White Hats Alliance idea, this notion that all this stuff was going on in the background. I had a lot of attachment to that through last year. And probably this time last year in the summer, I was most attached to it because I thought I was seeing things starting to happen, which reinforced that whole narrative and made it a valid thing. I've very much jumped off that train in recent months, particularly since the very start of the year. As 2020 turned into 2021, I've kind of thrown my cards in when it comes to all of that and walked away from it because I've not seen enough verifiable proof and evidence. So I've been keeping my distance from it all, and I've kind of disassociated myself from that whole narrative. That's not to say I'm not still for swaying, but I would only be swayed if there is evidence and proof available which is irrefutable and which stands up to scrutiny in its own right. So nothing cryptic, nothing coded, no pundits' interpretation of what's going on. I don't want to hear people saying, when Trump talks about the V, what he really means is this. And when General Michael Flynn said this, what he really meant was that. Because it's people's interpretation of events. It's speculation, it's opinion, and there's a world of difference between that and verifiable fact. So I would love that whole narrative to turn out to be to have been valid all along. I would love to throw my hands up and say, I was wrong, I should have had more faith, I should have trusted the plan. But I'm still waiting to get to the stage where I need to do that. And I'm really hoping that things are ramping up in that direction now. I would love to be wrong. There have been so many stages along the way where it seemed as if something is about to break surface and great revelations are going to be made in the mainstream. And on every occasion previously, it's fizzled out and it's come to nothing. But I'm starting to see so much mounting up now and so many things start to happen. It feels more palpable at this point than it has at any other point along the way.
So that's where I want to interject. Can I interject if you don't mind? So, and I just need, and I'm so grateful that you mentioned that, because it is so important that you did, because when you started feeling that in January, I was just like, come on, Mark, you know, let's not go down, you know, that lane. And I was on some real kind of like high of not so much trusting the plan as in the Q plan, but the divine plan. I was on some high energy. And then within this so-called truther community, which I hate that name because I prefer, we're all seekers of truth. yeah, where no one has the answers. No one got the manual and said, this is exactly how it is going to turn out. You're very right when you say this is other people's speculation and their analysis of how this is going to pan out, and pundits, and fair play to them. I want to cast your mind back to the one that you did with the eightfold takedown of the cabal, the A to Z takedown of the cabal, which I think will go down in history as being a very important framework for humanity. It went viral, and you have to always look to that, because it's what you said, both of you and Charlie Freak, who were on that podcast, that said that, you know, the media is in control by the white hats. I was losing hope myself. Like yourself, about 3 months later, I started getting a bit despondent and feeling this is just all a load of bollocks, excuse my French there, right?
Or hopium.
Or hopium. And I did for a very short period of time, because my health was taking the better of me, getting to a stage where I was, you know, feeling just crap all around. So I know how it feels to feel really dejected and stupid, if not, you know, for like, what am I doing? Why did I even do all of this? Like, you know, woke up and thought, what am I doing? This stuff is crazy. I'm not seeing any light here. However, I had great friends, and I've got good people that I speak to, and I, more than anything, have faith in the Almighty, and that believe that what is happening for the good. So you're right. We're now coming to a point, I feel, which is really important, and I feel it's only now beginning. We're now starting to see everything that you spoke about, which we were operating on different timelines. Yeah. So it was like a preview, that conversation of what was to come. But we estimated it would happen a lot sooner, because we wanted, say, Trump to win. Yeah. And that didn't happen. Why did that not happen now? We can look back and think, the level of corruption in the echelon of every establishment in the world is deep and dark. It's disgusting. The corruption is so far spread that this is a mammoth task to bring it all down and to expose it to the level it needs exposing. And look at the cognitive dissonance in humanity. Even now, I read some articles in the mainstream. They're sort of breadcrumbing what's going on with regards to the V, and people are still disassociating themselves to it. So it's very clear that even though we're starting to see the revolution begin, yeah, people are still asleep and think that nothing's happening. So sorry to interject you there. I think you have played a really bigger role than you can ever imagine, Mark, in this, especially for the British community and worldwide, because that framework is all starting to happen now.
Yeah, what pisses me off a lot is when I hear all these claims that the people can't just be told, they have to be shown, and it's all just a movie. Well, who's deciding the point at which enough people have woken up and it's now okay to proceed with the revelations? And how much longer is this thing going to be dragged out, if this narrative is correct, before it gets decided that everyone who's ever going to wake up from this has already woken up? See, in my mind and in my experience and from my perspective looking around me, anyone who has not yet woken up to the fact that this is one massive scam, a coordinated agenda, is beyond all hope and redemption. They're never going to wake up. They're never going to see it, no matter how long they live, no matter how more extreme things get. So in my view, we long past the point at which people still have to be shown. Now it's time for them to be told. We need these revelations. We need these facts, because what we've had over the past 15, 16 months is an enforced exercise in patience, whether we've wanted it or not. So we've had no choice. It's not as if we were asked, would you like to partake in a life lesson in patience? Would you like that experience? Would you like to add that to your soul's journey? We weren't given the opportunity to consent. We've just been forced to be patient. We've had no choice. And patience doesn't come easy to many of us. It doesn't come easy to me. No. It's clearly a life lesson I've had to learn, and many other people have as well. but it's just how long this thing is being dragged out interminably. And what hasn't helped is all these pundits putting dates on things. Oh, this is going to happen next Tuesday, and I've had intel that next weekend the grid is going to get shut down, the emergency broadcast system is going to come in at 8 o'clock on Friday, and all these kinds of promises which never ever come to pass. I don't know if you've noticed, anytime anyone has ever put a specific date on something to happen, it's a guarantee that it won't happen.
Yeah, well,
it's enough to drive you crazy. It's psychological.
Yeah, it's misinformation, it's distraction, and it's a lesson for us individually. I mean, I learned very quickly that you said the word disassociation. In a way, my thing for me is focusing on myself and how I navigate through this and how I impact others. And I think that, you know, accepting that we went through the trials and tribulations, the highs, the lows, the confusion, the wanting to give up, that makes us very much, you know, spiritual beings having this human experience. And I'm in agreement that those dates and having that fake hopium, it served its purpose, negative one, perhaps. Yeah. But we've pushed through that and learned to only trust ourselves. So I think that inadvertently it had a positive purpose now looking back at it, because it has not been a linear journey. And this is for us. I mean, I loved what you said. I was listening to your podcast, the latest one that you've done, and everyone, I urge you to watch that, because you speak from the heart, Mark. You wear your heart on your sleeves and you are very humble. And I resonate with that, because for me, myself, not having been experienced on the social media platforms, it was petrifying to actually come out and fight for justice and fight for humanity, and at the cost of friends and family, and being shy and having all these public speaking issues and just like clamming up before every show, I still pushed past that. So for me, in my journey, it's actually me finding my voice and realizing that I'm actually very strong. Just because we have these ups and downs, like, you know, you and I are the same. We have these moments, but essentially we're still holding space and we're still holding the light. And we are encouraging people to carry on, you know, and look within. And that you, by sharing your ups and downs with people, is like, people can relate to that. There's that relatability from, you know, people that watch you. So it's not like you're saying, yeah, everything's great, because it's not. We have to learn a very harsh lesson here. However, we can stay well-spirited even through the most darkest of times. And that's what I'm learning. And I'm learning never to give up. And when I do, honestly, the universe comes and catches me, because something so positive happens instantaneously the moment I start going down. And I love that. And that's what I love about this journey, if that's, you know, that even makes any sense.
I think we've all learnt so much about ourselves over the course of the past year and a half. We've discovered many things. I certainly have. So I do wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm very open and honest in all the broadcasts that I do, because I don't know any other way.
Yeah.
I mean, I spent many, many years as a DJ. It was my main livelihood for about 20 odd years. And all that mattered to me when I was in that state of consciousness was the next gig, the next party, the next tune, the next radio station. That's all I lived for. And I was a bit full of ego and attitude back in those days. You know, I carried myself with a bit of swagger, because you kind of have to, if you're going to make it in the DJ game, because it's a very tough profession to get on. You kind of have to have that little bit of ego, and you have to be a bit kind of braggadocious and a bit full of yourself, you know. And so that was me. But then I embarked on this truth path many, many years ago. I've been broadcasting now for 11 years doing this type of output. And I had to cast all that ego and all that attitude to one side, because it doesn't chime, it doesn't correspond with being this type of broadcaster, being this type of researcher. If you stand for truth and you want to discover and expose truth no matter what, you got to check your ego in at the door as far as it's possible to do that. So I've stripped away all that attitude now, and really what you see is what you get. This is the authentic me. This is the real me that all those people that encountered me in the club and the DJ and the nightlife game back in the day didn't see, because I kept it hidden. But I don't keep it hidden anymore. And I've discovered lots of things about myself as a result of the scamdemic. So even up to early 2020, I was in a kind of comfort zone, even though I was exposing all the machinations and all the nefarious activities of the corporate music industry and how that tied into the much wider agenda of what's really going on in the world and who really runs things. I kind of settled into my comfortable little routine of writing my books, doing my podcasts, doing my videos, doing my live shows and presentations and appearing at conferences and such. And all that worked really well for me. It slotted in alongside my family life. I had my private hire driving job as well, my main job. And I just juggled all of those activities, did a weekly radio show as well, and everything just kind of worked out. Then, like everyone else, I had my whole world turned upside down from March 2020. And I had to reassess everything, my entire outlook on life and what's going on in the world, because all those things that used to make me feel safe and secure had gone. So I lost my job. There was all the uncertainty of what the hell these lockdowns were going to bring and what it would mean for family life and how far they were going to take the tyranny. And even though I'd been reporting on the New World Order agenda, and I knew only too well what was in the plans of the so-called elites, I never actually saw this coming to the extent that it did. I never imagined that they would throw everything they've got at us all at once. So it was a shock to the system, even for me, with all the research that I'd done, because I thought they were going to continue to slow drip all this stuff on us and introduce it in incremental steps over an extended period of time. So it took me by surprise. And so I've discovered that I wasn't as self-assured as I thought I was. I discovered that I'm still prone to fears, worries, stress, anxiety, just the same as anyone else. And all of those factors got brought to the surface during the last 15, 16 months. And I've had to deal with some personal demons and some deep-rooted psychological issues, which, if I'm honest about it, have always been there. They've been there all my life. But this situation that we find ourselves in has amplified them, and it's forced me to confront them. I've had no choice. And that will be the case for everyone. Everyone's going to have their issues and their baggage that they're going to have been forced to confront and deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if anything, it's been a great teacher. It's been a great life teacher, this experience. It's not one I necessarily would have elected to go through or chosen, but we can all certainly take away a lot of personal value from it.
Wow. Wow. That was, that's going to warm a lot of people's heart, Mark. You spoke from the core of your soul. And I'd like to add to that, because when you do that, I never realized that when you share your truth, and it is frightening, and oh my God, I find it very frightening. And I found this journey very frightening. And when you speak, though, from your heart and soul, you touch many hearts and souls. And it is the journey of self-discovery. We're discovering who we are. Many more spiritually evolved people are saying it's remembering who we are. I'm experiencing a lot of mystical experiences. I'd started a long time ago. I'd say in 2019, January, when I'd split up from somebody that I thought I was going to, it's the first time I'm speaking about this, but your energy has also encouraged me to speak at how and where I was viewing my life. And it was then at that breakup of that relationship that I started seeing life in a very different way. Because, you know, coming from an Indian background, it hasn't been easy for me in this journey, because if you noticed yourself being at the march on Saturday, did you see many people from the Indian community there? There were a few. I'm not saying that there were, but hardly any. And at every single one that I've been to, I always keep an account of how many that I bump into.
And a few of them were COVID marshals.
Huh? Yeah.
A few of them were COVID marshals.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, right? And this is where I have found it incredibly testing, because my community, I find, have been very resistant to this whole narrative. They're not seeing it. Of course, most Asians, Indian people aspire to become doctors, dentists, and go and follow the academic fraternities. And I can see why that the awakening for them is not so easy, or that they're in this kind of vaudeville of a dream spell where they just don't see it. I'm laughed at by a lot of people from my family and friends who used to be friends, and people from that this isn't the Alpa that we signed up for. This isn't the Alpa that we knew. I mean, I've always been very different, but someone that wasn't very vocal on social media. I didn't really have an opinion on anything because I was never interested in global matters such as politics, because I found out very earlier that in life that it just did not interest me. I didn't get it, and I didn't want to, because something smelled off all the time and it would give me anxiety. So in January 2019, I started smelling something amiss in life. Something felt weird. So my awakening actually started then, but I didn't realize. And everything started feeling off. I started seeing a lot of synchronicities in terms of Gematria, and finding that I had a keen interest in all of that. So that by the time I got to 2020, March 2020, it took me 2 weeks to understand. For someone who never read conspiratorial books, who never watched any conspiratorial shows, didn't actually even know about a lot of this stuff, you know, that there was these secret societies and organized societies, what have you, all the things that we know now. But it didn't take me long to, it was like almost like it just downloaded very instantaneously. So the awakening journey was there was preparatory work that was actually going on in the background, which I didn't realize. And what happened to me in 2019 and 2018 really sort of propelled me to where I am now. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge where we've come from, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and pay respect to it and homage to it, and know that they were our teachers along the way. So everything that we are doing now, every person that we've interacted with, every bad situation has only propped up in our life as a teacher, because there's things, that patterns that need to be dissolved, wounds that need to be healed, ancestral wounds, generational wounds. And maybe we've come in to heal those. And that's why our journey could look or seem a little bit more arduous, because the fight for this truth, or to help humanity ascend, is certainly not an easy one. And I'm sure you will be in agreement with that, because it's not. It's brutal and it's ugly. And losing people that you love, really love, and especially now where there's this uncertainty around this poison that everyone's taking. I don't know anyone really within my friends and family that haven't taken it. So my parents and myself are probably one of few people within my community that haven't, but everyone else has. And this is where I realized that, God, your battle is even harder to a certain degree, because when I didn't see people from my background, or as many as I hoped. I'm not saying that there isn't any. There are a lot of silent people that are awake from the Indian community, that they're just afraid to speak up. Why? Because of societal conditioning and what people will think. And there is that sort of fear. There is that fear to, speak up. And I don't really like it. All of that doesn't bother me. So this journey really has taught us so much, Mark, so much. And I think somewhere along the line, we have to say, hey, we survived, or we're surviving, and we will always survive, and we will always be okay.
Yeah. And one thing I've realized is, no matter how much you think you're suffering, you can always find somebody that is in a worse position than you. So that must mean somewhere in the world, somebody's in the worst position of all, if you take it all the way back down. But, you can feel that you're having a hard time of it yourself. And I feel that very often, being honest again. But I get so much correspondence from people that it's never long before I read an email from somebody that's got horrendous health problems, or maybe they've taken the V.
It's all right.
And they'd wished they hadn't because of the after effects that they've got. And then you hear of what's going on with children when it comes to, you know, SRA and trafficking and all this, and even thinking about what animals go through in slaughterhouses and some of the horrific things that happen to animals, you realize that you could be in a far worse position than you are. So you have to always keep it in context. And other than that, it's just a case of continuing to do what you know in your heart to be right, because you have no other option. Knowing what we now know, it's impossible for us to go back into normie land. No matter how much we might want to do so, and I'm sure we all have times where we would say, I wish I didn't know any of the stuff that I know now because I could be happier. See, I go to the pub occasionally or go to my local social club, and I'm in among normies. I was down there last night and they're watching the football and they've got their pint of beer, and you know, somebody will walk in, you all right, mate? Yeah, come over here. Who scored then? And what you doing next Saturday then? And do you see old so-and-so? Yeah, he was in here last. And they don't seem to have a care in the world. They're just carrying on like everything's normal, everything's fine. And it can be very tempting sometimes to think, oh, I wish I could just be like them because life would be so much easier. But really, are these people learning what they need to learn for their souls to evolve and grow? Are they getting all that work done in this lifetime? I would argue that they're not, whereas the likes of us are. Yeah. If we come here to learn lessons, if we come here to gain experiences, to enable our soul, our spirit to grow, then I would rather just get the job done now than have to keep coming back time and time again and keep doing it over successive lifetimes. So it can be, it can be painful, it can be burdensome, but when you have woken up to truth, you can't go back, even if you wanted to. You just have to keep going. And so it just becomes a case of standing in right action, doing what you know is the right thing to do in all instances, and just moving forward. Doesn't matter how hopeless things might seem. It doesn't matter how much it might feel like your efforts are all in vain. You have no choice but to keep doing it.
I love that. You know, I think it was in January, I saw a meme of yours of the skeleton. It's like this, saying, waiting for the plan to evolve to happen. I was like, uh-oh, Mark's gone there. He's gone there. He's gone there. It's like, Mark, don't go there.
Still waiting for that emergency broadcast system.
Well,
any year's good with me.
Well, to be fair, we're starting to see like articles about that, but it's so breadcrumbed that this is the thing. This is my gripe with it all, right? I'm noticing it because we are aware and quote unquote awake, and we can see what they're sort of subliminally doing in the media. So there was an article in The Guardian yesterday saying that people who take 2 of the Jabberwockies are likely to nod off. But then when you read the rest of the content, it is so sarcastic and so condescending and patronizing. It's in yesterday's Guardian. And you're thinking, they're really playing people like, on the one hand, they're saying you're going to nod off. Yeah, so I'm sure people understand what I'm saying if you've taken 2 of the Jabberwockies. But in the article, in the content, in the main content of the article, it was so much nonsense saying, well, that's very unlikely. However, they've had the main title to say that. So it's just, they're teasing people, and it's almost like it's very sinister, I think, that they're teasing people, but people still not getting it. Like they're oblivious. I went out on Saturday night after the protest. It was a friend's birthday, and I could feel myself feeling really positive, elated after, this lovely day that we've had to see so many people. But I had to leave around about 4 o'clock. And I think I heard you mention you started seeing people scatter off around that time anyway. There were a lot of reasons for that, which we'll talk about a bit later. But I had to go to a friend's birthday. And I remember when so I had to go all the way back home and come back into central London. And I remember walking to this restaurant in Mayfair, and suddenly my energy started dropping. Yeah, I've got high heels on for the first time in a long time. Yeah, so I'm clacking away. And then I'm approaching this restaurant and I'm seeing all these computers for facial recognition. So you have to sort of scan your face before you go in, and everybody's been asked to wear a mask. So I could see myself getting a bit irate. And I was speaking to my friend Madonna about this. I was going, I'm like stomping now to the place, yeah? And then I'm thinking, Alpa, calm down, because, every time you've got angry, it's never got you anywhere. Anyway, I walk up and the lady goes, "Make your mask, please." So I was like, "Say nicely, Alpa, politely, just say you're exempt." And it literally worked. Like, she didn't know what to do because they're so bot-like to give orders to people because they're following orders. So it's so robotic that when I said very nicely, I said, "I'm exempt," she looked at me as if I've like given her a glitch into her system and she didn't know what to do. And then she just had to type something into her iPad. Anyway, as I went down to this restaurant, and it was all dark and it was all boppy, very loud music, and I found it very difficult to cope. Everybody's wearing masks. And I thought, oh my God, is this the new normal now? Like, have people just become like really acceptant? Yes, I still was the only person that didn't wear a mask. Two, when I needed to get up to go to the toilet, when I needed to go in, just because I said I'm exempt. So I was feeling like high from this protest to going into normality. So this is the switch that I find I have on a daily basis, because it's all good and well. I speak on these Zoom chats with my homies, with the people that are on the same page, and it's great. And I love what you said, that you've got a group of people that you've interacted with in your hometown, and that you have these weekly meetups or monthly meetups. So I think that's really important. A lot of my friends are on the internet. I want to morph myself into the screen and be like, hey, let's hang out. There's very few people that I physically hang around with that are awake. That's the issue that I have.
Yeah, it can really alter your perspective on the way things are going in the world, depending on who you've been socially interacting with or corresponding with. So, like you say, you can spend all day chatting to fellow truthers online, and you'll be sharing information, and they'll say, "Oh, look at this. This looks promising, and this isn't going to plan for them, and looks like this is starting to fall apart." And it can really affect your mood and your sense of optimism, to the point that you think, yes, finally, we're getting somewhere. Finally, the scamdemic is falling apart. But then all you have to do, as you say, is go out into normie land and try and get into a pub or a cafe or a restaurant or a supermarket, and you see all these masked zombies walking around like extras from Day of the Dead. And it just reminds you of what a long way there still is to go in society generally to get people on board. And that can really bring you down. So it can very much depend on the types of conversations you've had with the types of people. It can really color your perception as to where we're all at with all of this. But I've got to say, I'm seeing a lot of strange, anomalous things happening. I mean, the most obvious one for me is that ain't Joe Biden. Whoever that individual is, it's not the original Joe Biden. This is kind of important. It's kind of important that the president of the United States, or what is purported to be, is not the original person of that name.
When kind of important. The name, when you just mentioned his name, I giggle. He has provided so much comedy. I mean, for me, what's got me through is laughter in these 15 months, because, you know, I've got a very jovial personality and I can't stay moody for too long. And I love memes. I literally, like, I'm so immature like that. I love the memes and sharing them with my friends. Joe Biden, though, he's hilarious. That definitely, of course, it's not him. And there was this news broadcast from Jesse Waters where he's actually saying that Joe Biden is played by Jim Carrey. It was there. I shared a post about it. They're telling you on the news that this is Joe Biden and he's being played by Jim Carrey. Are people even paying attention to it? No. This was what I was like, oh my God, this is big news. Why are people? But they're just fobbing it off as there's another conspiracy theory. And this is what it is, because why? The programming is deeply embedded. The programming, the frequency that they've been hit at. And we have to come from a place of, as hard as it is for people just not getting it, we have to come from a place of compassion. And like you rightly said, they're here on their soul journey. They're here on the covenant of their own soul. Yeah, they're here on their own. They chose this journey. And if they've taken this, and whatever the consequences are going to be of anyone and whatever happens to them, if they've chosen not to wake up or chosen to be want to resist what people are saying, then unfortunately they're going to suffer the consequences that could be as a result of taking the thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a joke they've largely scrubbed the internet of pictures of the original Joe Biden.
Yeah.
So if you do a Google search or even a DuckDuckGo search for Joe Biden, you'll get mainly the current guy, whoever he may be. But it's still possible to get old photos of the original Joe Biden. And when you come across one and you compare them side by side, you can see it's two completely different people. So something is going on there. I don't know what's been going on with the Queen, because previously she only used to pop up on TV at Christmas, but you can't bloody keep her off telly these days. She's everywhere, popping up, taking a trip down to Cornwall for the G7, and Boris Johnson popped around the palace the other day and they put the video out of that. So she's all over the place at the moment. She was on a Zoom call the other week with a bunch of other people.
Staged though, doesn't it feel all staged to you?
Yeah, it does feel all staged. This is the point I'm making. There's a lot of stuff that I can't explain at the moment. And many people would say, see, this shows that there is a plan. This shows that there's a white hat alliance in control secretly that's making all this stuff happen. And I'm not completely chucking all that out, because I don't have any alternative explanation for all this strange stuff. It does often feel as if everything's being made so ridiculous, so absurd, so infantile, that they want people to wake up. They're trying to show that it's all a big pantomime. Look at the Matt Hancock situation. That just came out of nowhere. You know, the press haven't had a bad word to say about him all these months. They've been supporting him. They just report what he has to say. They're not critical of him in any way. And then all of a sudden, there's a particular week where they decide to go in on him, expose this affair with this woman. I mean, who knew that Matt Hancock was a Mr. Loverman, you know, ladies man, Lothario. I never saw that myself. But very, very quickly, we've gone from Matt Hancock had an affair and broke his own social distancing rules to he's had to leave his post and now be replaced. I'm sure, I know there's more to that whole incident than meets the eye. It's going to be pushing some agenda or other. But it's just another strange, anomalous thing that we have to throw into the mix. And it's just so ridiculous that he would get caught on CCTV like that, and that the video would just happen to emerge.
And when did
it was obviously meant to happen. It was meant to come out that way.
It came out on what day? On Saturday, the day of the protests.
That's right. That's right.
And so I think there was something there, because of course they know what's happening. They know that people are revolting, and you know this is a revolution taking place. Of course they know. You had Anna Breeze calling out the BBC. You know, saying that, you know, you better be covering this because this is how many people are going to be there. And did they? Thousands. They still said thousands. Sky News, they reported it a little bit more better than the BBC. But I believe you've been speaking to Michael O'Byrne-Nassir, and you'll be doing a podcast with him soon. So yeah, if you'd like to just share what's been going on with that. There's been progress, even if it doesn't feel like progress. With him against Matt Hancock, Chris Whitty and Neil Ferguson. I think it was the case was thrown out, right?
Yeah, well, I recorded a new show with Michael yesterday. I've just finished editing it. So as soon as I jump off this call, I'm going to be posting that. So by the end of today, Monday, as we record this, that show will be up for people to listen to. And Michael is remaining very upbeat and very optimistic. You know, he's a proper pitbull Rottweiler. He doesn't let go of anything. He's made the point that he wouldn't have taken this case on if he wasn't absolutely convinced that he would win it. He wouldn't have wasted his time otherwise, and that he's never lost a case yet that he's pursued. He reiterated that point with me on the podcast. And so he put out an update last week stating that the Deputy Chief Magistrate of the UK, who is the presiding judge in question for this case, basically has rejected it going forward on the basis that the huge, extensive amount of evidence that has been presented amounts to nothing more than hearsay. It doesn't. It's demonstrably not hearsay because it's all documented with proof, with citations. And so when Michael made that announcement, it caused a lot of people to feel very deflated and very downbeat and think, well, this is it then. This is the end of it. This was our best hope and it's now going to go nowhere. And he's made the point in this show that I'll be releasing later that that's anything but the case. He's saying that it's very much game on, not game off. And because the Deputy Chief Magistrate has taken this stance, it means now it goes to appeal. and it gets presented to the High Court in the form of an appeal, which ensures that it gets heard afresh. And he feels that the evidence that they presented speaks for itself so much in terms of being demonstrably valid that there's no way on earth it could be legitimately dismissed as hearsay.
Right.
So things are going to proceed to the next stage. He feels that we are going to get a result sooner rather than later, and there's every reason to assume that that result could still go in the favour of the people, the People's Union of Britain, which is the movement that's bringing the case. So he's advised me and everyone else to not get downbeat, not get discouraged, and to stay on board with this, because he's taken it all the way, and he won't let up until he gets the result he's after.
Yeah, I think it's following a similar trajectory to what's going on in the legal establishments in the US. And this is all about the exposing of the corrupt systems. So it being thrown out is a good thing. And I'm in agreement with that, because it's just exposing the legal system here in the UK, as is in every country. I mean, remember, we're in that like timeline of exposing people. And nothing is by chance. I think this is planned. I really do. I mean, like you just said, Matt Hancock on Saturday getting caught on camera and the things that he's been doing throughout the year, coming on GMTV, pretending to cry, talking about people having taken the jab, and with ridiculous names like William Shakespeare. I mean, come on, this is just a mockery and absurd. And if you can't see it, and the thing is, a lot of my pseudo-intellectual friends just cannot, who happen to be barristers, have no understanding of common law at all. And it's just a testament to how brainwashed and how deeply ingrained this is. So yeah, I mean, some people are now beginning to say, this doesn't sound normal, which is great. That's what we want to hear, because they
got there in the end, bless them.
Bless their cotton socks. Yeah, I know. And sometimes, I do get a little bit kind of impatient as well. I just like, oh, when they can't see what's going on, because they are relying on 3 or 4 sources of information. They've become so lazy because they've been taught that these establishments are the go-to place because of the pseudo intelligence and the arrogance that these establishments have. And they're considered to be the go-to places for information and credible sources of information. No, sorry, mate. No, that's not the case. Now, the power is with us, the people, yeah? And the research that people have done in this time, I think for myself and people on this journey, it's really showing us that we are all capable of fighting. We are all capable of, doing the right thing, right action, consciousness in action, love in action. And this is just that, the journey of that.
Yeah. Well, this is a point that Michael has made about his case, that his adversaries constantly underestimate him because they see him as this scruffy, hippie looking oik from Newcastle. and they just make the mistake of thinking that he can't possibly take them on, because they've had distinguished careers in the legal profession, and they know their job inside out. They never imagine that somebody of his ilk could have done his homework and could not only be a worthy adversary for them on the playing field, but actually surpasses them in terms of his knowledge and his legal acumen. And he said that's the basis on which he's beaten every one of his opponents in all these previous cases. So they dismiss him as some, scruffy little Herbert from Newcastle to their peril.
Yeah.
And it's been my experience that the more academically educated you are, and it's very interesting when you look up the meaning of the word academic, because it actually means irrelevant. It has no relevance to anything. So they're telling you right there, if you have academic achievements, you have irrelevant achievements that have no real foundation or value in life. But the more you've been through the public school system, the university system, the more letters you have after your name, the more entrained and indoctrinated and conditioned you are in the system's way of doing things and thinking about things. Whereas the more you've been able to avoid all of that, the clearer you can see things for what they really are. So it actually helps if you haven't been to university, if you haven't been to public school, if you don't have additional qualifications. You know, some of the most holistically intelligent people and just streetwise people that I know left school at 16 with no qualifications.
Yeah.
And it means that they're able to think for themselves on their own terms and in alignment with that which is natural in the world, rather than that which is unnatural, which is the control system's educational indoctrination standards.
And the thing is that a lot of the these pseudo intellectuals or the academics, especially who come from the medical fraternity, who are also oblivious, because this is the way they've been taught, to the corruption that lies within their establishments. They have no idea, but they're so conditioned and so motivated by the money and the titles that it's this sense of self-entitlement that they have, which that condescending and patronizing kind of way and energy that they exude to their family or friends, because I got a lot of that, is where it's just like, you know, one person said to me, Alpa, on Oxford graduate, and you know, thinks that his knowledge surpasses anybody's because he comes from Oxford, and his response to me literally at the start of this was very eye-opening, but it happened right at the start to prepare me again to realize what was to come from this type of folk. Was, Alpa, is absolutely anybody listening to your nonsense and your gibberish? Like, anybody? And he gave me a list of the so-called like friends that we have in common. Like, Alpa, have a word with yourself. This is ridiculous. It's just nonsense. I'm not even going to look at this because it's seriously a waste of my time. I wanted to kill him. I honestly wanted to kill him. I wish I had this then to clobber him on the head, but I didn't, but I did it in my mind. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to have to deal with. It was at that point though, that made me very strong. Yeah, to get myself into a position of, right, I'll show you. Yeah. And I think not from that egotistical plane, because to be fair, you know, that I can't wait when this comes out in full disclosure. That's what we're all hoping for. But I had this conversation today on a closing note that maybe we are not meant to expect that full disclosure, because we are seeing things now. I mean, it's getting so ridiculous in the mainstream media that it's so obvious to us, yet so not obvious to the masses. So this is now where I'm just in observation mode and seeing, well, let's see how this unfolds now, and continue our fight, continue to stay in that ascended state, continue to stay strong, fierce, loving, and accepting of every single sort of, you know, emotion that we go through, and honor it and respect it and neutralize and discharge any negativity that comes our way.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Oxford too, and I've got 57,000 subscribers on YouTube. So a whole load of people listen to what I have to say, but I never went through the educational system at Oxford. I just happened to be born there. I've got a chapter in my upcoming book that I think I'm going to call, But What Do I Know? I'm Just an effing DJ. And I really like the fact that, similar to what I said about Michael, a lot of people can underestimate me, and they can think, well, this guy just plays records. How is he qualified to talk about what's going on in the world and who really runs things? And anyone can do the research that we've done. You don't need letters after your name. You don't need special qualifications. You just need to be able to do research on the internet and have the time and the will to put into it. So anyone can come to the realizations that we have, even a DJ. And I love people underestimating me and thinking, you know, this guy doesn't know anything. But in actual fact,
you know, I didn't know you were a DJ when I first heard that takedown of the Cabal HD. It was your voice. You have a very like
it's the radio voice. Yeah,
it's the radio voice.
It's what my wife calls the radio voice. When I start doing it, she says, "You're doing your radio voice again. Stop it."
But I love it because it had an impact. Because the thing is, it actually works. And this is where I think, look, just an epiphany now. This is where I think that people are drawn to you, Mark, because it's that relatability. Because we have been listening to the radio. Well, I switched the radio off 10 years ago, but it does remind me of that style that I've become at that point was accustomed to hearing from the radio. But you come with a different vibration. You come with the good vibration, no pun intended. But yeah, and the frequency of what you are saying is is not the same as that. So, you know, I think you are really cool, and we're on a positive trajectory, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the next few months, you know, continue to unfold.
And everyone's got a part to play. So a lot of people write to me and they say, oh, thank you for all your radio shows and your videos and stuff, and your live talks. I don't know how you can do it. I could never get up on stage or do a radio show like that. And I just think, well, it's what comes naturally to me. It's no big deal to me. It's just what I do. But there are things that other people do that I'm not so good at. I'm not really good at engaging people in the street. So I'm not really someone that will walk up to someone in the street and spark up a conversation and hand them a leaflet and say, what do you think about this? Other people are much better at that than me. Proper on the street activism, you know, standing outside buildings and boycotting places and doing picket lines and things like that, and doorstepping politicians as they get out of their car. I'm not very good at all that stuff, but other people are far better than me. And then even making contributions like putting together websites and putting together graphics, designing flyers, leaflets, books. Somebody's got to do all that stuff.
Absolutely.
You know, the information that we want to get out has to be put out in the form of books and pamphlets, leaflets. Somebody's got to design all of that. Somebody's got to come up with catchy logos and eye-catching colors and things like that. So if you're making that kind of contribution, it's an important contribution. Exactly. Designing t-shirts, all of this stuff, building those placards that you see at protests. Somebody's got to come up with those slogans and actually build the things, hammer them to a post of wood, you know. So everyone's got some kind of contribution they can make, drawing on their skill set, drawing on what they're good at. And as long as we all keep doing that and supporting each other. Another thing is healers and natural health people, because the likes of us, we're frontline warriors, and we take a hit every now and again. It's tough out there on the battlefield. And every now and again, we go down for a while because it's the way it gets us. And at those times, we need a support unit to help pick us up and get us back on the battlefield again and give us what we need to heal our bodies and our minds and our spirits. And there's a lot of great natural healers, health practitioners out there that we can call on to support us in that way. And I've lent into a lot of people over the last year, and I'm very grateful for them being there to help pick me up. And so we all support each other in these ways and bring what we can to the table, and together we can get this done, and we will, and we have to. There's no other way. There's no other outcome. Having come this far down the line, having trudged through the oceans of shit that we've had to these past 15, 16 months, it's not an option that we just roll over and give in now. It's not an option that the evil and the darkness wins. We haven't been through all of that to just roll over and die. The only option is that we succeed, that good wins, the light wins, Team God wins, we win. Has to be that way.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Amen to that. Mark Devlin, I'm so glad that we did this today, and I'm sure this is going to have the most positive impact on people. And this is what we're about. This is what we're doing. Frontline, we're being honest with self, honest with others. Wearing a heart on a sleeve is in fact our superpower. One of my t-shirts is going to be called that. Authenticity is my superpower. It certainly is yours. We love you, Mark. I love you, Mark. And yeah, God does win. So with that said, my friend, until next time, I love you.
All right. Thanks, Alpa. All the best.